vagyunk olyan helyzetben, hogy itt egy asztalnál több cégtől sikerült egy csapatba kerülnünk, úgyhogy miután elég nehéz lenne egyértelműen kimondani azt, hogy mi is az, ami ezt okozza, illetve nem ismerjük egymás helyzetét, ezért abból az irányból közelítettük meg ezt a dolgot, hogy inkább mindenki mondja el azt, hogy ő mit gondol, és megnézzük, hogy ebben van-e bármilyen szinergia. Azt tudnám mondani...
Annyit, bocsánat, csak az elején hadd kérjek, hogy pörgessük, jó? És hát, ha lesz még a többi asztalnál is valami a hozzászólás.
Nagyon-nagyon röviden akkor összegezve sok-sok pontot írtunk össze. Az, ami kiderült, ami nagyon közös a dologban, az, hogy hiányzik az a fajta összhang a szervezeten belül, ahol a magasabb felsővezetésnél megfogalmazott célok és kitűzések, azok hogyan képződnek le azokra a szintekre, ahol valójában a problémák jelentkeznek. Tehát az emberek értik-e azokat a szintű célokat és problémákat. Nagyon sok esetben ez alapján, mivel ezek nem képződnek le rendesen és nem értik, rosszul választják ki azokat a projekteket, problémákat, amiket megoldanak. Ugye John beszélt erről, hogy ne csak válogassunk a rendelkezésre álló eszközökből. Sok esetben nincsenek bevonva azok az emberek, azok a dolgozók, akik érintettek a problémában. Esetek nagy többségben külső csapatok vonulnak be megoldani a problémát, amikor ők levonulnak, a probléma visszajön. És egy nagyon-nagyon érdekes dolog, ami összetetté teszi az egészet, hogy az egész változáskezelés, az a probléma megoldásával mennyire zajlik közösen, mind emberi szempontból, mind szervezeti szempontból, és mind folyamat szempontból. Amire a végén talán azt tehetjük fel, hogy ugye az emberekkel is foglalkoznunk kell, őket is meg kellene tanítanunk, a folyamatokat szabványosítani kellene, az újakat, ez is sokszor hiányzik, illetve ki kell alakítani azt a szervezeti kultúrát, azt a változást, azt a szervezeti felépítést, ami ezt fent fogja tartani. És én úgy gondolom, hogy vezetőként legalábbis, amit láttunk, az nagyon sok esetben annak a hiánya, hogy ezt a példát mutatva fenntartsuk, és utána felülkövessük ezeket a változásokat.
És alapvetően Magyarországra fókuszálva, hiszen én azt gondolom, vagy nekünk legalábbis itt az asztalkörül alapvetően Magyarországra van kapcsolatosan információnk. Mi azt látjuk, hogy a kulturális különbség az nagyon meghatározó, tehát az az igény és az a kulturális háttér, ahonnan jött ez a gondolkodásmód, az jelen pillanatban Magyarországon még nagyon gyerekcipőben jár. És a másik, ami igazából szerintem nagyon nagy mértékben gátolja, az a felsővezetői vagy tulajdonosi motiváció és példamutatás és elfogadása ennek, ami nélkül nekem meggyőződésem, hogy az alulról építkezésvel nagyon nehezen megvalósítható.
So John, there is a question for you because it was said that probably the cultural differences give some kind of challenge how we can implement effectively the lean method or thinking in the country. But you mentioned in your very first presentation, but it should be cultural free. So basically I can see here some kind of conflicting information. Can you please help to resolve this one?
We like conflicts in...
So let me respond to the issue around the national culture and the culture in, where are we now? Hungary. And let's see, because next week I'll be in Denmark and that's a different culture. And then let's see, I often go to Brazil, I often go to Vietnam, I go to Australia and go to many different countries. So perhaps Hungary is different. Perhaps it will work everywhere else, but not here. I don't know. But let me tell you let me tell you a little bit more about how I got involved in this. Maybe a 5-minute story. I'm very sorry for so many stories. But so, who remembers the 1970s? That's right. There are two reasons people don't remember the 1970s. One, they're too young. The other, there are other reasons that don't remember the 1970s. And so in the 1970s, in the United States, I don't know in Hungary, in the United States, there were many books. There were many books about the cultural part of management. So there were books about Japanese management. Okay? And there was a famous book in the U.S. called Japan as Number One, finished by a Harvard professor. And there was a big fashion around Japanese management, Japanese production, yeah? And so as a kind of young American, I fell for that. You know, so I read the books, and I said, yes, there's this great cultural answer in the land of the rising sun in Japan. So I read the books. I had no connection with, when I went to Japan in 1977, I had no connection with Japan. I didn't speak a word of Japanese. When I graduated from college, I had never met a Japanese person. Okay? But I read the books, and I said, I'm going to go chase this great, wonderful thing of there's a cultural answer. I was looking for a cultural answer. Okay? So in a way, I'm qualified to talk about this particular question. So my objective, so in 1977, I said, yes, I want to work in Japan. I want to work for the biggest, most Japanese company I can find. I don't care what industry, whatever. I want bigger, the bigger, and more Japanese, the better. So then it started a journey. First, I tried to learn some Japanese language, and I'm from a rural part of the United States, in the southeast, Tennessee. And in the rural parts, in the mountains of Tennessee in the 1970s, was not a great place to learn the Japanese language. But I tried. I learned some. And so I moved to Hawaii, actually, which was a much better place to learn the Japanese language. So anyway, I lived there for a while and went to graduate school. So I went to Japan in 1983. I said, I'm staying here for at least a couple of years. I'm going to work for this big Japanese company. I'm going to learn the secrets, and then I'm going to bring them back to the United States, and then I will save my country's manufacturing, and I'll be a hero, and I'll make a lot of money, and it'll all be over in 2 years. This is true. This is basically a true story. So then when I arrived in Japan in 1983, already I knew some language then. I knew some Japanese language. So just like here, I learned, like, the first words I learned had to do with beer. And I would often confuse the word to say one and the word for two. And so I'd go to a bar, and I'd order a beer. 2 beers would come. It's a great way to make friends. Have 2 beers here. And so that was but by the time 1983, I spoke better language. Anyway, I was looking for a job. I wanted to work for the big Japanese company. So I arrive, I'm knocking on doors. Okay, I'd like to work for you. I want a job. And every company I went to, the same thing happened, which is they took one look and said, what are you doing here? Didn't anybody tell you that we Japanese companies don't hire foreigners? No one tell you that. And I said, well, I heard that, but I thought, smart young American that speaks a little bit of Japanese, you can hire me. And so they slammed the door in my face. So I stayed. I was determined. I stayed for 6 months, knocking on doors. Had no money left. All my savings were gone. And knocking on doors. I'm not going to give up. And knocking on doors. Finally, I got to one company, knocked on their door, and it was Toyota. And everyone else slammed the door in my face. They opened the door, took one look, they grabbed me by the collar, pulled me inside, slammed the door behind me, locked the door, said, you'll be the one American to work on this side of the Pacific to help us with a new project. That project was to build cars in a joint venture with General Motors. And that became famous later maybe some of you know it, as a 50-50 joint venture between Toyota and General Motors to make cars in California. So my job was to help Toyota teach General Motors and to transfer that system to California. Toyota had never done it on a big scale before. They had built small plants, but this was the full system, okay? So the strength was they knew their weaknesses, or they acknowledged their weakness, said, we don't know how to do this. So they hired me. So then I was there as a, I was supposed to be sort of an expert. And as a young American, I didn't mind being like an expert, kind of like Porter. So they would ask me questions about things. They would ask me questions about union relations. I had no idea. But they would ask me questions, and I would give them an answer. It was my job. And so we went through this process of figuring out of everything, right? So the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, the way you learn is through doing. So I had to work in the factory, had to work in this thing called production control. And then I'm helping me and this team of Japanese to develop a program to take this over, to California. So part of it is the equipment and the production and all that. Another part is for people and how people are developed. Yeah. So the different Japanese people are there, and they're developing training programs. So they would bring me these training programs and ask me to comment or to make a verdict And I would say yes or no. I would say, yes, this will work with Americans. I would say, no, Americans won't like that. You know, and I was doing a lot of that kind of thing. And one day a man, a master trainer, Toyota's master trainer for standardized work. Okay, I mean, he's taught thousands of people how to do standardized work in great detail. Again, it's almost like, imagine a factory worker that's working like a great, really like an athlete or like a great bartender. You ever watch a great bartender and what they can do when they get orders and they're going very fast and someone's yelling at them for a different drink and they're, anyway, it's amazing to watch. And so this is the way we try to design standardized work. I mean, it's something where it's choreographed, you know. And so anyway, this was Toyota's master trainer for standardized work. So he brought me one day this training program. He said, okay, John, we're going to do this in California. Now, I should tell you, see, I start telling the stories, and this will go on forever. So as it turned out, see, we didn't know in the very beginning, but it was GM's worst plant in the entire GM system. Toyota didn't know that. Like that day when they hired me, and they made the agreement, they didn't know it was GM's worst plant. And it was their certified worst plant. It's certification. It's true. But they did a quarterly quality audit. Okay, every quarter a quality audit. They still do it. Your company probably does it, right? So they rank every work site from top to bottom. Best quality, lowest quality. This plant was always at the very bottom, out of 150 or something work sites. It competed with one other factory to be the worst, actually. It was a conflict between to be the worst. That turns out that was the site that was chosen for the joint venture. And not only was it certified worst in terms of quality, the workforce was the worst workforce in GM's entire system. And again, even the UAW, the union, said, those workers are so horrible, even we can't talk to them. I mean, this was the worst workforce. What did I say earlier? Remember we talked about how you begin by building in quality, right? That's number one. This is a factory where they would intentionally sabotage quality. You know the famous old stories, some of you know, some of you live them, but maybe a soda bottle inside the door panel. Or as the vehicle's leaving the plant, maybe some sand in the gas tank, right? And one day actually, in final inspection, they found a loose bolt for the tie rod, the steering. It was so loose, it was going to fall off within a couple of miles. Right? Then they checked in 200 vehicles, the same thing. The worker had intentionally done that. And someone was going to die. One day some guys, so they would go out on illegal strikes against the union's own work rules. They would just go out on strike. The union even would say, don't do it. They would go out on strike. Once they wanted to go out on strike to go to a American football game. And there were two guys that wanted to go to the game. And so they said to their friends, let's go on strike. And that day the friends said, no, we're not going to do that. That's crazy. And so they took some foam, put it in a closet, set it on fire. Smoke billowed through the whole plant. Shut the plant down so they could go. That's the workforce. And it was the exact same workforce, because I worked with them. Okay, so this is the workforce we're talking about. Horrible. Culturally, not Japan. A long, long way from Japan. So this is what we're dealing with. So can we make this work or not? We're not sure. So this trainer, master trainer, comes up to me, says, here's the training we're going to do. I took one look at it and I said, no. I said, no. This will never work in America. It was this training that they do that is so exactly prescribed. I said, you can do this with Japanese. You can't do this in the U.S. Not with independent Americans that like to be free and creative, and these UAW people. There's no way you can do that. And he said, why not? And I said, well, you just can't. And then he said, why not? And I said, well, Americans won't like this. He said, why not? Well, it was too prescriptive, I said. And so finally then, he got very frustrated with me. And he went and he brought out a similarly sized book, about this big, this thick, this big. And came out and slammed it down on the desk in front of me and said, here, look at this. So I opened it up, started to look at it. And it was exactly the same as what he was proposing to take there. But what it was a copy of a training manual that they had gotten from the United States in 1950. It was designed by Americans for Americans. Now, in 1984, when this was happening, this training was completely forgotten in the U.S., completely forgotten. Toyota still used it exactly the way they got it. And they still use it to this day. They use it now back in the United States, in California, and Kentucky. They use it here in Europe. They use it everywhere. What I learned from that, I went to Japan seeking a cultural answer. What I learned from that is that you don't change the culture by trying to think, how can we think differently? It's very hard to change the way you think, but you can change the way you act. So here's some words you could write down if you want. It's easier to act your way to a new way of thinking than to think your way to a new way of acting. So what we did at NUMMI that changed that culture, okay, in that company, okay, the worst workforce in the whole system, right? In 1 year, after the plant launched, we know what a car launch is like, right? It's terrible. Oh, it's a mess. The first quality audit after the launch, it didn't just get better. It set a record for the very best quality score any GM plant had ever gotten with the exact same workforce. So what changed was and that workforce, those troublemakers that were setting fires before, they were absolute total advocates for that system. What we did is we changed the way we worked. That changed the values and attitudes. That changed the culture. And there is something, I don't want to deny though, that yes, there is national culture. So you do have to accommodate that. You have to think about that. You have to be aware of how to engage people. So the thing we talked about earlier about telling people what to do and all that, it's different. If to do this in Vietnam or in China is different than it is to do it probably in Hungary or Brazil or different places. But the fact that you can engage, that people want to do good work, and the fact that this system will work is something that's been, I think, in my experience, proven. And what that taught me was to never use culture as an excuse. To try it, then if something doesn't work, as conflicts occur, as problems occur, you just deal with those. And you make changes and you adjust the system for the local culture. So some adjustments are required, but is there a reason that it can't work anywhere because of the culture? I was looking for that. So in a way, the coach talked about credibility in this sense. That's what I thought. My experience is that that's not the issue at all. What we need to do, though, is have a good faith effort to put this new way of working in place. That will change the values and attitudes. And I could go on forever, but I won't. So, I'm sorry. So, okay.
Actually, I don't know how to continue after your presentations. Biztos föltűnt, hogy ide állt mellém Szabolcs, tehát nem annyira láthatatlan ember ő. És a következő javaslatot tette, amivel én maximálisan egyetértek, de szeretném azért ezt így felvetni, hogy ez most tényleg annyira izgalmas és értékes előadás volt, hogy mi lenne, hogyha ez lenne az zárszó, illetve megkérjük Johnt, hogy ha akarna még mondani valamit, és akkor ezeken a témákon, amin eddig dolgoztak, esetleg folytatnák a gondolkodást, akár így közösen, hogyha egy cégnél vannak, ha nem, akkor érdemes talán névjegykártyát cserélni, úgyis célja volt ennek a rendezvénynek. And we have just run out of time, but can I ask you to close this conference to say a few words about your experiences here?
You say something?
Yeah? Thanks. Okay. Akkor átadnám a szót, én köszönöm mindenesetre a figyelmet, és akkor a záró szó John Shukuri. Okay.
Thank you. Just a couple of closing comments. One is that with only one day, our intention is really to try to give you something that will be useful, not just to put on a show. So we worked hard to put together the program. You'll even notice that the 4 questions, they weren't just canned questions. They were based on things that happened today. The first presentation was about the research about sustainability. So therefore we asked about sustainability. The next presentation was about revolutionizing an industry. In that case, it was publishing. But as we know, every industry needs a revolution, I think. And certainly public sector is one of them as well. The third question, what was the third question?
It was about the coach role of...
It was about coaching. We talked about that obviously this afternoon. I firmly believe that managers need to be a coach, not in the sense of a formal designation, but that our role needs to be developing people and helping them be successful, solving the conflicts and obstacles that come to us. I think we need to do that. I think it's difficult. So that's the oh no part. But that's the bad news. The good news is that I firmly believe it is learnable if we want to. The fourth question, what do you need to do? The idea is to turn it now back to you. It doesn't matter about us, right? It's what your company needs to do. And the last part of the last question was, what will you do? Not to sound like a silly middle school or elementary school coach, but it's really true. There's only one thing in the world that we can change. It really is true. And that's us. That's myself. And one of the things that bothers me, I visit companies and senior leaders say, I get it. What can I do about my people? I get it. I have this challenge of getting my people to get it and how to get them to change. And the challenge is not getting them to change. The challenge is getting you or me to change. And that's the only thing we can change. Again, it's really true. If you've ever been a parent, you know you can't just wish your parent. Your children will be different. If we can't change our kids to mold them just the way we want, can we do that at work? No. The only thing we can do is change ourselves. That means that last part of the last question. What will you do? And that really is the only thing that matters. As far as what we will do, the institutes, we're all small. We try to do the best job we can. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes not so okay. But we share a passion about this, which is that all of us, there are 18 of us now in Hungary, we have a passion that we think we truly believe this can help our countries. And therefore we work very hard to bring this about. We think it can help the public sector, transportation, the healthcare, all of our manufacturing industries, service industries. We truly believe if we could bring these ideas to play, to actualization, the things in our countries will be better. So for that, and we can do anything without your support and without knowing what your needs are. So I want to thank you for coming and to recognize that now that the Lean Institute Hungary has started, I will need your support. It may look easy, it's actually a lot of hard work. So this is the beginning, I hope, of a relationship with all of you. My first time to Hungary, I hope not the last. I think there's much more wine to discover. I keep talking about beer and wine as if I don't drink that much, but I do enjoy when I do. So thank you for your participation. I look forward to seeing you all again. And with that, let's close the day. Thank you.